Hello, friends. Welcome to Logistics of Logistics podcast. My name is Joe Lynch. Thank you so much for joining us today. Today's topic is your ERP a data graveyard? How to unlock millions with Nauta's Valentina Jordan. How's it going, Valentina?
Nice to meet you, Joe. Thank you so much for having me today.
It's good to talk to you. So, Valentina, please introduce yourself and your company and where you're calling from today.
Yeah, I'm Valentina Jordan, co-founder and CEO of Nauta. Nauta is an AI native operating system for shippers. So we're helping shippers connect everything from inventory all the way into warehousing. And today I'm calling from Miami.
Very nice. Very nice. So, um, you say it differently than I do. I call it Nauta. Nauta. I don't have that cool Spanish accent that you have. So so I'll make sure I put a link to your LinkedIn profile, link to your website, any other links you and your go-to-market team give me, I'll put in the show notes. So what does Nauta do? What problem do you solve and who do you solve it for?
Great question, Joe. So we work with shippers, and when we're talking about shippers, these are companies that are moving goods both domestically and globally, from retailers, wholesalers, distributors, manufacturers, and traders. So again, companies where their main objective is distributing products. And how we help them is by connecting all of their SKU level data from their different systems into a single source of truth.
Right. So SKU, that's the SKU level. So that's the individual product level. And correct me if I go astray here. One of the challenges these shippers have is they often have maybe an ocean shipper that they work with, maybe a warehousing company they work with. They work with some carriers over the water, works with some drayage companies. They work with some other carriers, for over the road. And they have their own systems. They have their own ERP, which we reference. They have an order management system. Hopefully that's within the ERP. But they might be in multiple WMSs, TMSs, and assorted other systems. I think we have visibility systems now. So I have all this disparate information, and I only have visibility a bit to access, I don't know, some of it, a third of it, 2/3 of it, but never all of it when I need it. Am I right to say that?
You're precisely right, and I think even if you want, we can dissect the challenge a little bit. How we see it, the framework is supply chain is divided in three main buckets: the movement of goods, the movement of information, and the movement of money. And everyone talks about how do you make the movement of goods more efficient? How do you reduce the number of intermediaries or stakeholders to make the whole value chain more effective? But what most people don't know is that in order to move the goods, you have two prerequisites, which is movement of information and movement of money. You need to be able to communicate, to share documentation, and you also need to be able to pay. And that's why we see that the shippers are the holy grail in the whole supply chain. Because if you think about it, they control the whole three things, right? They buy the goods, they decide who their supplier is, they have to move the information and have access to it because they need to work with their customs worker, with their 3PL, with their supplier. They pay everyone. So they're paying their, as you mentioned, the maritime line, they might be paying, right, the carrier to do their last mile. So that's why we go for the shipper. And that's why we think that the way to solve to what you mentioned, this fragmentation and these silos that we're living in the whole supply chain world is through the shipper. And then the second thing to your reflection, and I think it's something that we need to start like demystifying, is visibility. It's almost a word that is kind of cursed in the whole supply chain. And the reason why, it's because visibility, let's be honest, it's not enough. People need action, right? Like, it's not enough to know that your container's stuck in Rotterdam, or that your bananas, right, are under inspection. You need to know what are your options, what to do with it, how to prioritize what's critical. And that's exactly what Nauta does. We sit on top of your systems. Of course, the visibility is important because it creates a single source of truth, but we make all of this data actionable because the industry is ready for more than visibility.
Yep. By the way, going back, it's been over 10 years, maybe. Is it 15 years? Yes, it's 15 years ago. I ran a logistics company, and we would say to our customers, we have real-time visibility. And what we meant by real-time visibility is there's an EDI within our TMS, and that real-time visibility meant give or take an hours, right? It was never truly real time. And you said visibility is a little cursed. I don't want to just see that I have a, a car crash coming. I want to stop it before it happens. And I think the first step is having visibility. The next step is being able to take action and have enough information to take action. Because I think, we often use the term tribal knowledge in our business. And part of the reason it's tribal knowledge is because Valentina has two or three pieces of the jigsaw puzzle, and I have three or four more. And she's guessing, I'm guessing, we need to put all those jigsaw puzzle pieces together where we can see the true picture and then take action, as opposed to I guess I'll make a good guess. I've been doing this a while. I think I know what I'm doing. Last time it happened this way.
It's pattern recognition, right? A lot of the things that we do is pattern recognition. And if you've been doing something for 20, 30 years, you cannot predict what will happen. The problem is that we have a real generational change happening in the industry and people are retiring. And so this represents a very big risk for companies because if you don't capture all of these behaviors, this pattern recognition, this tribal knowledge that your collaborators have, then you're basically missing out on opportunities that can impact your revenue as a company. So super important there. And I would say you said something that I loved, which is first step is seeing it, second step is knowing what to do with it or acting on it. And I think you need those two to get to the third one, which is have artificial intelligence superpower, right? Your opportunities. And you can't go to the third step unless you cover the first two. And that's where we really specialize. We're helping shippers be AI ready because if you do not have your data properly structured, all of this infrastructure, it's extremely hard to see real ROI with artificial intelligence.
Yeah, I think you mentioned earlier, and I love what you said. You said the supply chain is the movement of goods, information, and money. And usually, I say the biggest problem in our business, or the number one question in our business is, "Where's my stuff?" The number two question is, "Where's my money?" and typically, I can't get paid until the stuff it gets there, and including the information.
Totally. And you mentioned something that I think we tend to forget, and it's shippers are in the business, they're not in the business of moving trailers or containers. They're in the business of guaranteeing that product is available when they need it to be able to meet contracts, to meet offers, right? And so they don't really care if the container is delayed. They need to know will this affect their fill rate, right? And that's exactly what we solve. That's our use case. We help shippers control for cash on cash and fill rate. That's how we prove real ROI. And when we talk about fill rate, we're discussing, of course, not having overstock, which to your point, where's your money? Your money's stuck on inventory that is not rotating. Or if you don't have the inventory available, well, you're missing on contracts and you're leaving money on the table. So we found that that's really where the bleeding pain is for shippers is fill rate and having product availability. And the way to solve for that is consuming from all of the data, making it autonomous, and giving you end-to-end control and a brain over everything that is going on in your supply chain.
Yep. We'll get back to more of this in a minute. But first, Valentina, tell us a little bit about you. Where'd you grow up? Where'd you go to school? Some career highlights before you started Nauta. And why did you start Nauta? What hole did you see in the market?
That's a great question. So I'm actually Colombian born and raised. And I've been building product for the past 12 years. I think I've had to relearn in the past 4 or 5 months because AI has changed the way that we're doing everything drastically. And I think we're in the era of relearning. We all have to rethink the way that we've been doing things. And so I'm a builder, love spending time with engineers. That's my jam. I was a very early employee at Rappi, which is one of Latin America's first unicorns, last mile delivery company, operating in 9 countries. So super proud of been building technology for more than a decade now. And we started Nauta because we saw a huge opportunity of empowering and giving shippers leverage back. And let me start with this. My co-founder Rafa, again, as I mentioned, I come with a product and tech background. He comes with the DNA of supply chain in his blood. His family used to own one of the biggest food distributors out of the Caribbean, so he literally has it in his DNA. Fourth generation Spanish immigrants in Puerto Rico, and what we saw was that combining very deep industry expertise with technology, we could offer a fresh way of providing back leverage to shippers. What do we mean by this? When Rafa showed me how the supply chain worked, the analogy or what I felt that came into mind, honestly, is that I've been cheating. Someone has been cheating with me my whole life. First with Santa Claus, and then with Amazon. Things just magically appear either in your under the tree or in your or in your door. And 90% of the population doesn't stop and ask themselves, like, how is this happening? And so what was fascinating to me was it's super chaotic, it's super siloed, fragmented, but the reality is that it works. And we can't come in here and say, hey, I'm going to fix something that works because it works. Yes, we can optimize it. Yes, we can make it better. Yes, we can help people, augment people, make their lives easier. But the reality with supply chain is that it works because we're eating, we're being able to buy, we're being able to distribute. So honestly, that's where I completely got locked in is how is something that is so massive that affects each and every human being around the planet, it's not more talked, is not more, there's no more innovation here. And that's the reason why we started Nauta. And then the second, which we were talking before we started recording, is we saw in shippers the holy grail of the whole supply chain, as I previously mentioned, because they're the ones who, at the end of the day, should have most of the leverage, yet they can't control what's happening in their day to day. So for me, that's fascinating. I'm a control freak, right? And you're putting me in the industry where you can't control anything. So that's the reason why we set out to solve for this. And the way that we found was through the data. So we're not in the business of optimizing the movement of good itself. We'll leave that to the carriers, we'll leave that to the brokers, we'll leave to that to the people who are actually experts. Where we're experts at is the movement of the information and the movement of money. And that's the level of scope that we solve for with Now.
I love it. I love it. I spent most of my career in automotive, and we always, my entire career was always about how do we get leaner, right? Especially the U.S. automakers, they wanted to get leaner and leaner, and obviously Japanese automakers kind of perfected that in the 80s, and now it's just everywhere in the world talks about lean, and now it's Lean Six Sigma and whatever. But it's also one of the main components of lean is flow. So I want things to flow. I don't want a whole bunch of silos. And so when you come to, and so by the way, when you're running your factory, it's flow, but I can control everything. All the guys working there, all the gals working there, they work for me, and we've got that flow. And there's an assembly line that is optimized to go as fast as I can work, but not too fast, so I have quality issues. But as soon as it leaves the factory, it's a whole bunch of silos, and I don't get to control them all. And it's not just silos in the US or in Colombia, they're across the whole world. So there's silos that have to be, some are using a different language, different date structures, different currency, different languages, different time zones. So it's not just siloed, it's really siloed and then mixed up with all of those other issues. So normalizing and getting it into the information, it seems simple enough, just pull it all into a place, but it's got to be cleaned up. It's not that it's wrong, it's just the US uses a different date structure than everyone else. And um, we have a different currency, different languages. There's not all of us. You speak Spanish and obviously English, probably something else. By the way, I have to say my joke. If you speak one language, or I'm sorry, if you speak three languages, you're trilingual. If you speak two languages, you're bilingual. If you speak one language, you're an American. But anyway, normal line. I know it's corny, but it's true. But getting back to it, getting all that data into one place so we can have flow. Because right now we've done remarkably well, but the expectation is we have to do better, and that means those silos have to come down. We have to be able to share between systems and be able to pull that system to an, I think what let's call it is, you call it an intelligence layer?
Correct.
I like it. I like it. So anyway, let's get into it. Before we hit the record button, we talked about four things we wanted to talk about. So the first one, you're going to have to explain this one, is eliminating data fragmentation and creating one single source of truth. What does that mean?
So look, Joey, I think you were just mentioning like getting into the flow and coordinating it. Supply chain is a coordination of over 10 stakeholders, dozens of documents, money flowing around. And so what we saw is a huge opportunity to centralize all of this data, so that AI can come in and do its magic, let's call it that way, right? On automating a bunch of the workflows that don't add value to the companies. So if you think about it, shippers, which as we mentioned are our main clients, they have pretty robust tech stacks. I think we need to kill this misconception that supply chain is old school and there's no technology. Actually, there's a ton of technology. Our clients normally have ERP, TMS, WMS, OMS, ER management. So they're paying significant amount of money for technology. The problem or the challenge here is that the systems don't always speak to each other, even if they're from the same provider. So the first thing that we do is think of Nauta as a membrane that sits on top of all the systems. It's capturing all this data from these repositories, right? Because they're systems of record, not systems of action. It's consuming from this. And at the same time, it's listening to all of the events that are happening in the industry. So this is AIS events, so satellite events from carriers, from brokers. We have ship availability, ETAs, all the timestamps that are involved, and we combine all the data so that there's enough context to be able to make the best decision at that precise moment in time. So you mentioned also about how data becomes obsolete because of EDIs. I'm going to be honest, EDIs are still out there. They're still
Oh,
probably
yeah,
one of the
absolutely.
main
They're not going away.
they're not going away. So what we do is that we combine all of this to be able to have help clients make the best decision in that precise moment of time with the information that's available. Right, almost like raising a kid. You do the best you can with what you have available at the time. That's how we help them, and the most special part about this is that we're capturing context from the operator. So we talked earlier about tribal knowledge, and tribal knowledge is a big one, especially in this industry, because it's compounded uh, learnings and behavior from people that have been doing it decades, time over time. And so what Nauta does using AI is capturing those behavior, those pattern recognition, and turns that into data as well that can be consumed and used by agentic models. So that's what we do. And that's how we reduce this fragmentation. We always start with our client systems first. We have over 200 integrations at this point of systems where we're constantly consuming. And we're not only consuming from them, but we're writing back. So we're augmenting your ERP, we're augmenting your TMS, we're making it more useful than what it used to be.
So if I am assuming you have your own separate platform that if somebody wanted to log in, they could. But I suspect a lot of your customers want you to do just what you described, which is we spent a lot of money on Oracle or SAP or Workday or whatever they're using. That those systems, the reason you created it, the reason you bought an ERP, it's enterprise resource planning, right? It's an odd name, but the way I've always described it is I'm a sales guy and I get my prospective customer. I got his address and I got his name. So that's my contact. And I go, cool, I'll put that into our system. And meanwhile, your shipping guy later on, when that becomes, says, hey, I sent it to Bob Smith. And you're like, Bob Smith's the buying guy. He's in a different country. Why would you send it to him? Oh, okay. So I guess we need to deliver to. So we have another address. And then I might have invoicing or payments, all different. So all of a sudden I have like 10 addresses for one customer and 10 different people. And so I want my manufacturing and my sales and my purchasing, I want all of those people to have the same information. And one way to say it is a single source of truth, one system that everybody's in. That's great. And then came along the TMS and we said, hey, cool, you don't have to use you can log into my TMS. And by the way, I've said this many, many times. Just leave your ERP, come over to our TMS. And last engagement I worked on, they said, Joe, I don't want to ever log into anybody's TMS. We've spent all this money on our ERP. I want the information pulled in. So that's what we're doing now. So in a lot of ways, WMS, TMS, and we're going to need other systems. But I think the goal would be to pull it all into one place. And by the way, TMS, WMS, if there's a separate order management system and visibility system, they're all great. None of us are going to say don't use those. It's just, it kind of defeats the purpose that we originally had the ERP for, which was I want all my information in there. I don't ever want to log out of this system and log into yours. Say, oh, I got 2/3 of my information over here. And then I log out, go into this other information. I got 1/3. No. So Nauta is the tool that gives you that what do you, intelligence layer that says here's all. So you're not only taking their information, but you're pulling information from other systems so they can make better decisions. I know one of the titles we considered today was something about making better decisions using Nauta.
Yeah. So we and you mentioned it perfectly. I think, look, we're not in the business of ripping and replacing. On average, a shipper stays with their ERP between 15 to 20 years. And that's the
But they're so hard to implement.
I know it takes 2 years just to implement them. So we're not in the business of forcing or incentivizing our clients necessarily to change their existing tech stack. We're in the business of centralizing everything and making it actually again an intelligent layer. And we don't only make help their operator or augment them to make better decisions. We make a ton of decisions for them that don't add value to the company, right? So we have agents that are constantly running, identifying potential issues, flagging, generating POs, identifying products that are below stock, doing all the demand sensing, doing all the logistics operations, so that the people, the team members, can actually focus on exemption management. Because the reality is that they're at the end of the day, they're firefighters, know that it's very hard for them to prioritize because it needs human intervention on almost any process. What Nauta does is takes all that noise away, helps you make those tougher decisions with having a single source of truth of data, and then makes most of the operational decisions that don't require human autonomously. So we're very direct with this. We find a balance of what actually needs a human and what doesn't. And we recognize that the industry is not fully ready for full autonomous. So we keep the human in the loop, which is the operator there.
But I'm assuming uh, your AI can clean up what, like I said, I just talked about the differences between US date and a date that you might use in Colombia or China or somewhere else. You've cleaned up the currency, make sure it's all the same language, same time zones. So it normalizes and, you know, and I'm assuming if there's anything's incomplete, you're going to go, hey, we got to go find that.
You said it perfectly, Joe. And so what we do is number one, what you mentioned, which is normalization. Second thing is that we adapt it to the BL, so the Universal Business Language, so that it's standardized across.
Wait, what is universal business language? That's a new one for me.
Yeah, so it's a scheme of data to be able to process data and standardize data. It's used a lot in finance, it's used a lot in other industries. We started to use it for supply chain to be able to standardize the data as much as possible. We try not to say that we're going to clean up data or that we're going to fix it, because we don't think that was something that we tried at first. There's nothing to fix, right? Data is data. What we call is return on mess. So we try to make this messy data eh, as structured as possible to provide real ROI. And the way we do that is through standardization and hyper verticalization on supply chain. So we have a proprietary context engine that is specifically trained on an industry, a company, and a user level, and it continuously learns to be able to capture all the data and train it to what's important in supply chain. Because let's be honest, if you tell someone what a BL is outside of supply chain, no one even knows what that is. So we hyper verticalize the data.
I like it. I like it. So the second thing I wrote down here was preventing revenue loss from stockouts. When you say stockouts, that's when the shelf is empty. And if I'm working with, I'll just make it up, Target, and I say, hey, I know you just let me put my new potato chips on your shelf after 3 years of us begging, pleading, and selling, and now, sorry, we don't have potato chips in some of your stores. And I'm sure they say, that's fine. whenever you get them. No, what they're going to do is they're going to fine you for that stock out. Um, and even worse yet, the fine is the easy part. Now you've lost reputation. They're saying, why in the world did we listen to those idiots? They can't support us. Um, so your customer hates you a little bit. Um, Now your customer who you got addicted to your new product, they're trying other potato chips that they might like better than yours. So the loss is so much greater than the fine. And everyone kind of focuses, oh, well, they charge us $1,800 for a stock out. It's way, way worse. And if you're a carrier, you might potentially not have the business anymore if that happens, if it's your fault. But stockouts is a huge issue, and the biggest retailers, whether it's Walmart, Amazon, they won't tolerate it. You, you don't get many chances with those guys because us as greedy consumers, we love availability. We expect same day, next day in many cases. Anyway, enough of my blather. Talk about preventing revenue loss from stockouts.
So yeah, we divide ROI with our clients in Nauta is two: cost reduction and revenue generation. Okay, we always start with cost reduction, and so we help them, as I was just mentioning, automating day-to-day tasks, reducing penalties, so delays, demurrages, everything around not returning the containers on time, which, believe it or not, it's huge numbers globally. We help them identify route optimization. So you have cost reductions that you can always target. Now, where you actually start to move the needle for shippers, as you just mentioned, is through what we call fill rate. And I don't want to focus only on stockouts because overstock is also a huge problem.
Oh yeah, that's when you have to send it back, right?
Well, overstock, yeah, is when you're buying more than what you need. And so you have excess inventory in your distribution center, in your warehouse. And so that means that you might be paying extra storage because you don't have time. Or the worst part is that you have cash tied on inventory that is not rotating. And so your ability to grow your business is basically sitting down on product that is not being sold. So we see it on both angles. We help clients get that pendulum right on the middle, which is overstock, not stock out. And the way that we do this is by, as I mentioned, capturing SKU level, control SKU control. So every since there's a need for a product, so since the demand sensing now it starts to intervene all the way until it arrives into the warehouse. So we're able to help procurement teams make better decisions around, okay, do you need bananas? How many shipments are coming of the bananas? Are the bananas going to be retained for inspection? Do you need a local supplier to be able to satisfy that need? Did you over order bananas on the last order? So you need to correct that with the next one. Is there a delay historically of bananas because of bad weather in February? So these are the sorts of things that Nauta is gathering through the data, through pattern recognition, through behavior, through context, which is the most important thing. Not only suggesting, warning, suggesting, but taking action over what's needed so that you don't fall into any side of the pendulum, which is stock out and overstock. So that's one very important. And then the second, which people don't talk enough about, and it's cash flow is a silent killer in supply chain, right? Like most companies don't grow because they don't have the cash flow. And so we help our clients with cash on cash. So that's identifying better payment terms. Again, really deeply connected, rooted to overstock and stock out is how do you plan this better so that you have the right cash cycles to keep growing your business.
Yep. So I mentioned the whole, stock out, and you just reiterate it's not just stock out, it's also overstock. And um, again, I'm an automotive guy, and I know you work with manufacturers. One of the reasons automotive companies run lean or they try and be just in time is because there's constant changes to parts. You have thousands of parts that have to go together. So sometimes the material's missing somewhere in the supply chain and they can't deliver all the parts. And so that's obviously a problem. So the people at the plant, what they do sometimes is say, we'll just have a whole bunch of inventory. We'll get a month of inventory here, and then I don't have to worry about it. Well, the problem you worry about there is now I have a month of money sitting on shelves. And you go, well, that's okay. I'm willing to do that. It also goes obsolete. What happens in automotive, it's one thing, which is We made a change to that part, a quality change or material change. And you go, okay, so just throw that stuff out? Yes. But with it, when you're talking about food, overstock means I ordered 25,000 chicken chicken platters, whatever you call them, and they're going to go bad in the next week, and the retailers only can sell 14,000. Okay, we have to go out to a trader and get rid of some or donate them, but in a week they're not worth anything. So stock outs, bad thing. You're going to get in trouble. But overstock, you're going to go broke. And um, and you look at the. I have to mention this. I mention this every once in a while on my podcast, but I think it's a fascinating thing. We have Walmart here. Walmart's a fantastic store. It's a benchmark. I live in Michigan. We have Meyer stores here. Very similar, 6 states, very similar. We all prefer Meyer, of course. But they have tons of SKUs, very challenging, but we expect it. When I go to Walmart, I want them to have all the SKUs. I want to be able to buy a t-shirt and potato chips and chicken and also lawn products, right? Um, Now there's a lot of stores that have popped up that have very few SKUs and they are killing it. Costco has very few SKUs. Why? I suspect because it's easier to manage. My mom asked me to get her decaf coffee at Costco. You know how many decaf coffees they have there?
One or two.
One.
Yeah. And their
One.
strategy is they normally bring in a brand and then they have their own spin of it after their white label.
Well, so they have Kirkland is usually so they'll sell Starbucks and then right next to it there'll be Kirkland brand. It's usually the same coffee. I mean, usually the same, not same coffee, same provider. So anyway, getting back to it, Costco, very few SKUs. Trader Joe's, very few SKUs relative to Walmart or Aldi, fastest growing grocer, very few SKUs. There's a reason companies like that model because SKUs are hard to manage. We're talking about this, the revenue loss from overstock or from stockouts. There's people who are actively changing their business, recognizing the importance of managing inventory.
Totally.
Anyway, enough of my blather. Let's talk about the next one. So, I'm not so familiar with this one. It is reducing dry runs and detention fees. What is that one about?
Beautiful. So, I mean, we were just talking about, right? So, detentions, penalties, delays, hemorrhage, as everything around getting penalized for not performing, right? Your job on time. So, think about in the whole supply chain, right? You are basically renting retail space to help you move product from point A to point B. So let's say I'm going to make something up from Brazil into the US, to one of the ports in the US. I'm renting space, which is a container, in a boat, which is the retail space, to help me move that shipment or that product from point A to point B. You have X amount of time to be able to return that merchandise, that the retail space that you rented, so that the carrier, the maritime line, can keep using it. Same thing with the chassis, with everything on time. So if you're overstocking, for example, and you don't have enough space in your DC, in your distribution center, in your warehouse, that's why you see so many containers parked out of these distribution centers, because they play around with these times to be able. Let's go back to Costco. I don't know if you've seen a Costco. How they do is that they keep everything in pallets because it's so super efficient. They just offload it up dock in the dock. They have huge docking areas in their stores. They take it straight into the different shelves. Not too much human intervention, and then the container is out. So they're playing around with these times that they have of this retail space, because what people are not seeing is that physical space also holds value in terms of guaranteeing that your products are rotating. So we help our clients a lot managing these times of offloading schedules, returning the containers or the chassis on time, so that they don't incur in these penalties. Because what ends up happening here is that your landed cost and a per unit is affected if you have a price, you don't have enough retail space or warehousing space to be able to put that product there. You end up paying more on penalties, so your margins go down because it ended up costing you more to move that product. So It's all about the details in supply chain, so about the context, and that's where now that comes into that granular level of detail.
So let me make sure I understand this. So you're saying there's that shippers are paying for dry runs, which means they arrive with no load, and so they're going from where to where when they have no load.
I mean, it depends. So what I just described are the penalties. The dry runs can be, I go into the port and you schedule a job with a carrier and you don't have the documentation in place or it wasn't released, and so you already have to pay for it because it was there and they can't pick it up.
I got to pay that. I got to pay that guy for him to either sit there or go and come back tomorrow. And maybe I lose the truck. Maybe I lose the driver. Maybe he says, I've had enough of you guys because you waste too much of my time. Sometimes drivers aren't getting paid. But when they're not getting paid, that means you're again incurring a whole bunch of bad will. And drivers talk. So after a while, they say, I don't want to work with those guys because you go to the port and they never have their stuff ready.
Exactly. So again, what we see most of our clients, shippers, again, wholesalers, distributors, manufacturers, traders, retailers, is struggling is with penalties, ensuring that all of their times align perfectly. And the way that we do that is guaranteeing that the information you mentioning is flowing correctly. And the way for that information to flow correctly is reducing fragmentation, guaranteeing data availability, and structuring in a way that all those models can use it to help prevent. So being proactive, not reactive.
I'm assuming once you get all this information in one pane of glass, whatever you want to call it, you can start to use AI to make predictions, I'm assuming.
Yeah, so that's a great point there, Joe. So we actually use AI to standardize the data. This would have been impossible 6, 7 years ago because of the volume of data. Everything's completely transactional. So it's changing by the second. So we do use AI to be able to structure, contextualize, and standardize, create all the data ontology. But we are also using the AI again to create machine learning. We are big on ML models, and we have agents that are taking action over the data. So we see it as a 3-layer tech stack. We're centralizing data. We have predictive analytics and context, which is completely proprietary of Nauta. And then the third is we have the agentic layer that is helping you take action over the data, flagging and removing all the noise of what's actually needed from you instead of having you just be reading 500 emails a day and trying to filter through everything.
Yes, yes. And, if there's the one issue that we talked about first was this data fragmentation, which kind of is an issue throughout all of this discussion, which is I have information in my ERP, and I wish that was the only place I had to go. But I know I also have to go check my email. And in some cases, people say, oh, I'll just text you. Okay, now I've information in another system. And then maybe I got a phone call. All of those, it's totally fragmented. And as soon as, even if I can make a decision, because the text was to me, the call was to me, the email was to me. What about the rest of the supply chain is trying to use that information? I think I'm all harried. I got 2 screens up, and I'm thinking, look at me, I'm a machine. And my boss says, boy, that guy's invaluable. He's might be a bottleneck because he is basically acting as a computer over here, and he doesn't need to. We have the ability to pull that data into one place where everybody can see it. So not just Joe sitting in Detroit, but also the guy down in Latin America or a guy over in China. Everybody's looking at the same data at the same time.
Exactly. And look, and that's Nauta's vision. And I think, I mean, I'm happy to jump a little bit into this, but you see so much innovation in other industries. Let's take the fintech or financial industry, right? I can pay for my coffee in Iceland, in Norway, in Singapore with my debit or credit card from the US, from a US bank, and the all of the different stakeholders will receive the same information, which means that the transaction can go through, right? The acquire, the rails. And the reason why this happens is because the rails of information are there. That doesn't exist in supply chain. And that's what we're building. We're building the rails of information so that innovation can keep emerging. We're building the rails of information so that shippers can have higher leverage and more control over their whole movement and supply chain. So I think there's the time is now in supply chain. People are ready. People are looking for solutions. They're looking to implement AI in their whole processes, and that's why we're super convinced that the time for supply chain to innovate is now.
Yep. I love it. I love it. So, one last point I want to talk to you about, and this is my favorite one that we talked about, which is moving from container level to SKU level control. Um, when somebody's tracking, they usually are tracking a container in our business, in the logistics business, in the transportation, just the container. But the person who's getting it, they care about, is the SKUs I ordered in one of these containers? Please tell me which one. And I know we're doing better at pulling that together, but it's not an exact science.
No. So you bring something, a great point here, Doran. I think that's like part of Nauta's differentiator is that it's part of our DNA to really understand what the shipper needs and what are they looking for. And when we started, we quickly realized that the container wasn't what they cared. The trailer wasn't what they cared. The flight number wasn't what they cared about. They cared about, again, their fill rate. So making sure that they had the product available. And the reason why that product is so important is because they're either running low on product or it's because it's one of their top SKUs, right? That generates most of the revenue. So they need to be able to have access to understand what are potential risks. Is it coming or not? So I do think we have the false misconception that shippers care about the container. They really don't. They care about the banana that's inside, the coffee mug that's inside, because that's the contract of what they have to deliver. So what we do with all of the data structuring is that we combine all of the SKU level data, meaning from when there's a need, so demand sensing of a product based on their historical sales, based on their safety stocks, based on their availability, and we are able to tell a story of the SKU from origin to destination, combining all of the different sources and the data governance from that SKU. So, what does this mean, for example? So, I don't know if you've seen, but most of the times, uh, I don't know, product codes in a purchase order are complete, and names and descriptions are completely different from the buyer to the supplier, right? In the invoice, they don't even match. So, what Nauta does with AI is understand that, okay, let's say you have a gray coffee mug. In my ERP, it can be gray coffee mug, a medium size, and in my suppliers, it can be mug for coffee, adults. It doesn't necessarily match, right? So what we do with AI is understand that those two products are the same, even if they don't have the same code, and start to tell a story of how they're moving from origin to destination. What are the risks? Where do we need to intervene? Does that present a challenge for the company? And we loop in the human when we need them to make critical decisions around money or around communicating with other people.
Right. Back in the olden days when I used to work on China programs, I used to send containers to China. And we'd also receive containers. And it was usually multiple because it was automotive. There's a lot of parts. And we didn't have good visibility for them coming to us. But I remember when they would arrive, somebody would call me and say, "Hey, your stuff arrived." And I'd say, well, "When are you going to when are you going to unload it?" And they'll go, "Oh, well, there's 10 in front of it. You know, if you want, you can come look through it, but don't." There's always kind of rules about what you did. So me and other engineers would walk back there. Of course, you need a flashlight because it's this dark container, and everything is just crossed the ocean. So it's not only got pads on it, but it's also wrapped in plastic. And we're like, I think this is it. But keep in mind, they're the Chinese people. They write in their their documents are in Chinese with somebody writing in English underneath. So somebody had to translate it all. And a lot of times we would look through these containers and I was like, I don't think my stuff's even in this container. And they said, yeah, it's in one of these containers. And I was like, yeah, it's because the guys who were loading it just said, hey, there's all this stuff. It's got to go to the US, loaded in containers. I don't know. I'm sure it's gotten a little tighter, but it was sometimes days before I could even get my stuff after it arrived. And you never really knew which container it was in. It was maddening. And by the way, um, when you're translating stuff like that, it's not always easy. Also, um, you pack it to make sure it doesn't get broken on the trip overseas, not for somebody to unload it. So, but your point is perfect. The customer cares about SKUs, not containers. So if you say, "Hey, your container's here," cool. Is my stuff in it? I don't care about the container.
Exactly. And when am I going to have it available? When can I pick it up? How long is it going to take for X, Y, Z? And so that's where the data comes in, and that's where having this action over that granular level is what we've seen that we've been able to unlock using AI. And we've been able to unlock setting all these data foundations by setting on top of their existing tech stack, ERP, TMS, WMS, creating this single source of truth, and bringing basically all of it into one single layer that creates an actionable um, decision in a very precise way.
So, Valentina, if somebody's listening, they say, "Yes, this girl knows her stuff. I need Nauta," or how do you say it?
Yeah, Nauta, not as perfect. That's the one thing, I still say very much in Spanish, but
Well, we got the Midwest way of saying it, which is Nauta. But if they say yes, I'd like to do this, but what's that implementation look like from the time that they say yes, let's do this? What does the implementation look like, and what are they doing to support that implementation?
that's a great question. And this is something that, again, like coming from the industry, we understand that you probably have war scars of implementing an ERP TMS for a couple of years and have to change all of your processes. So we try to make it super seamless and painless for you. And the way that we do it is it's a two-step process. The first thing is we connect to your ERP and your email. And the reason why we connect to the email right away, it's because that's where 80% of the transactional data is going.
Oh, really? Okay.
So we go with email and we go with ERP. The ERPs, we have it integrations with Dynamics, with Infor, with SAP HANA 4, with Oracle, with you name it. We've done
My daughter works at Workday, so I hope you're connected.
we do it all. So integrations is the name of a game. We start there. And it takes around 30 days from the moment that we start onboarding to when you're live. So it's super fast, it's super painless. You don't need to change basically any process. The only thing that you need to do is connect to the email and ERP, and you'll start to see how your data starts to flow. We integrate first with the email through consumption, and then after 30 days, and we know that the data makes sense to you and that you feel comfortable with it, we start writing back into your ERP. So it's a process of working of collaboration, but it's super fast and super painless.
Now, if somebody says, "Hey, this I can't have you changing anything because we just started working together," I'm afraid. Can you go back and look at the last 60 days and give me a sense of comfort on this stuff?
Yeah, 100%. So we can go as back as our client allows us to. Even with the email, like we can go we decide on, what's how comfortable you feel without going 30, 60, 90 days back. And the same thing with the integrations. We can go back and extract all the data. What you need to be sure is that at the beginning, the autonomy of the platform is highly controlled by you as a user. We're not going to make decisions for you that you don't feel comfortable, and we keep the human in the loop.
You're not changing the data unless it's normalizing it.
Correct. Correct. And we are not making decisions for you that you don't feel comfortable. We're in the business of augmenting operators, not replacing it, because the knowledge and the experience is something that we all need and that we want to power on. So that's our jam. And so we're not doing 100% autonomous. We keep your experts in the loop. What we're doing is reducing all the noise and superpowering them by helping them surface what's actually critical, important, and we cut 90% of the job for them so that they can handle the loads of volume. Because let's be honest, if you're in supply chain, you're always busy. There's no Christmas, there's no New Year's or working 24/7. So we basically alleviate all that.
Yep. And if you're working with good sized companies, shippers, distributors, wholesalers, manufacturers, retailers, traders. They are already successful. They already have a way of doing business. They can't have upset. They can't go, "Oh yeah, we implemented this, and we were only down for 2 days. That's good news." Well, who's going to explain to the boss the loss? Right? Can't happen. And I think I think it's really good news because what you're saying is, um, all the fragmented data in my email, my phone calls, stuff in a TMS that one of our partners has. Um, we don't have to worry about that. Everything's pulled into a system. Now, are you guys like are you a new page within their ERP? How is this? How do I see your information?
Yeah, so we actually have a Nauta app, which is a web application where you have all of the data, and not only the data, but you have the actions. You can collaborate with the agents to take over decisions, and you'll see the decisions that the agents are making. So we have a completely Nauta platform. But in addition, we're writing back into your system. So integrations we do with post and get. So we're consuming and then writing back information. And the way that we do that again is we write things that you otherwise couldn't get. So I'll give you an example. We calculate your free time for you, calculate more precise predictive analytics in terms of risk of something not arriving. So all of the calculations and all of the inputs that you otherwise can't get on a system of record, now it does for you, and then you can have them back into your ERP. We're super comfortable collaborating with the ERP and augmenting, superpowering the ERP, giving it all the transactional data that it needs, because we do believe that the way to innovate in this industry is not ripping and replacing, is superpowering all of the different stakeholders.
I mentioned lean earlier. So lean practitioners, I did this job for a while. I facilitated a lot of. We always look at order to cash. So how long from the time I get the order to the time I get paid? And somebody says that's 60 days. The goal then is to get to 50 days, then to 40 days, and then 30 days. And the way you do that is you take out any wasteful step, any waiting, anything that doesn't add value. And we have all these systems, and I think the systems we have are great. But in my lean practitioner brain, I say I want one system that goes from order to cash. And I think that what that means is at some point, our ERP will be that order to cash. And that means all the other systems or the information supports that.
Maybe or maybe not. Like I think the time will tell in terms of like
Yeah, that's just how I'm looking at the world. Again, everybody's got a little different vision of it, but um, I just know every once in a while somebody will say to me, "We need this system," and I keep thinking every new system has to just more information that is in. It's I'm not going to say it's trapped because we do a better job every day of moving the data, but it's still your system is an island that somehow has to be bridged to the rest of the continent.
totally, totally.
Anyway, Valentina, let me summarize what we talked about. Then I want to get your final thoughts on the topic. We covered a lot of ground here. So, I'm talking to my friend Valentina Jordan, and today's topic is your ERP a data graveyard? How to unlock millions with Nauta's Valentina Jordan. So, the first thing we talked about was who you guys serve: shippers, distributors, wholesalers, manufacturer, retail, shippers, including traders. And what you're helping them do is get better at that movement of goods, movement of information and money. That's what we expect, and it's taking data from all these disparate systems. So the first thing we talked about is this data fragmentation. I have tons of information, but it's in different systems, and it's sometimes in somebody's head. That clerk that you depend on so much, who memorized everything, is walking encyclopedia of your business. um, that's great, but we should put them to work in a different job where they can be more consultative and and have all this information at their fingertips instead of clouding their minds. So we got to get all of the information out of emails, PDFs, uh, get it out of the TMS. If you have a separate order management system, we got to get it all into one place, unified. And that's the single source of truth, so to speak. And this will help us prevent some losses. And those losses are on excess stock that we carry, excess inventory that we carry because we can't trust our supply chain right yet. So we have an extra 15 days, an extra 30 days, or just as bad, we got too lean and we weren't able to catch that problem. So we have empty shelves, and our customers and the end customer are all very unhappy with us. Um, you guys can help us with both. You can help with inventory is the name of the game. I did a podcast years ago, and it was called Inventory is Everything.
It's everything.
Logistics in many ways is is, I guess you could call inventory part of logistics. It's more important than the transportation costs typically.
100%.
So we sweat over the details of, is that an extra $80 for that truck? You're like, it's the inventory is worth $1 million. So next we talked about reducing the dry runs, and these are the penalties that we're paying a carrier to drive over and not pick up something at the port, or not getting notification that it's ready. There's a lot of information specific to drayage that not easy. During COVID, we did a really good job for the most part. Our supply chains, they broke a little bit. We found some places that were brittle, but we all had enough. We all had enough. Nobody died of starvation. In fact, I heard somebody on my podcast said COVID-19 or 20 that they gained during COVID. So next, we talked about SKU level data. The customer doesn't care about containers. They care about the SKUs inside of the containers. So Nauta can get me out of that discussion of, is my stuff in that container? I want to know where my stuff is, not where a container is. And I've done that before where we say, hey, the container's here. They're like, is my stuff here? Your containers are here. Which ones? The stuff I want or not? We'll know in a few days. So, and the last thing we talked about is the implementation, which is easy, which is necessary, because no one wants to go through a long implementation program. We won't tolerate it anymore because people are busy. Anyway, enough of my blather. Put a big old bow on this one, Valentina. Final thoughts on the topic.
No, I mean, please reach out if you're interested in controlling your fill rate. We are in the business of helping shippers. That's who we leverage. That's who we help. Again, for Nauta as an AI native operating system, connecting, as Joe said, all of your inventory to logistics. There's no one source of truth here. You need to be able to gather all of your data to make the best decisions. And I think it's an invitation for shippers to start experimenting. We're living in a new era where AI, it's super powering all of this knowledge, all of this context that we've gathered for hundreds of years at this point. And the time is now for the industry to start revolutionizing the way that we've been doing things. Not to say it's broken, because as I said at the beginning, first with Santa Claus, then with Amazon, things do arrive. But there's a huge opportunity to put AI into our day-to-days and make it more efficient, make it better.
I love it. I love it. And I think AI is really hungry for data, and the data has to be in a place and in a way that it can be digested. So AI is only as powerful as the data we can give it. And if you don't unify the data in one place, we're losing an opportunity if you don't do that.
100%. There won't be true ROI. It's not magic either. So you need to be able to build the house in the right foundation. That's the analogy that I always tell my clients, given that we're in Florida, is you don't want to build your house on the Everglades with that with wobbly foundation. You need to build it on solid ground. So that's what we do. And that's what enables you to be able to superpower AI.
I love it. I love it. So what conferences will we see you and the fine folks from Nauta at?
So we'll be at TPM next week, which is super, super exciting. And I'll also be at Human X AI Manifest.
You were just at Manifest.
We're still speaking about Manifest. Look at me, still thinking Manifest. It was great.
Yes, it's the Super Bowl of logistics and supply chain.
It was amazing. So no, it'll be TPM and Human X, which is one of the biggest AI conferences out there, and excited to.
Where's that one at?
San Francisco.
Oh, nice. When is that?
That's the April 6th.
Very nice. Well, coming up fast.
Yeah, coming up fast, and excited to represent supply chain. There's a bunch of deep tech and robotics, but we're using tons of AI in supply chain, so we'll be there to represent.
Well, a lot of those robot applications are now for supply chain. So super important. So what I'll do is I'll make sure I put a link to your LinkedIn profile, link to your website. Any other links you give me, your go-to-market team gives me, I'll make sure we put in the show notes. And thank you so much, Valentina, for taking the time.
Thank you, Joe, for having me. It was a great conversation.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. And thank all of you for listening to my podcast. Your support's very much appreciated. Until next time, onward and upward. You have been listening to the Logistics of Logistics podcast, where we engage with leaders in the logistics and supply chain community. If you like what you hear, please subscribe, hit the like button, and leave us a nice review on Apple or Spotify or wherever else you listen. Also, please check out our videos on YouTube and connect with us on LinkedIn. We're very big on LinkedIn. And you can also reach us on the logisticsoflogistics.com, our website.